Hi, my name is Micah Warren. I'm a math professor at University of Oregon. I'm going to talk about the security budget and Bitcoin's security model. I believe it should be modeled more like a picture. It's not a number. It's not a hash rate we need to get to. It's not a price or a block reward we need to get to. It depends mostly on the slope of a curve. So I'll draw some pictures and explain what I mean. So first of all, I'll draw a curve which I think you should be somewhat intuitively familiar with if you're familiar with how Bitcoin works. This is a 1 over x curve, and this is going to represent the rewards of mining per hash rate, or per hash rate. We can do it as a rate. So why is this 1 over x? It's because it's difficulty adjusted, right? If the difficulty adjusts, if the number of, so on this axis we have hash rate, I should say. If the hash rate is low, if very few people are mining, your rewards are higher. If the hash rate is high, your rewards are lower. This is a difficulty adjustment. Okay, now there's another very important curve, which is going to tell you precisely where the hash rate is going to end up. This curve looks something like this. And this is going to be the marginal cost of producing hash. So, the first hashes that are produced are going to be typically the cheapest, the most efficient ASICs, or the cheapest electricity. Low cost, they're mostly almost always going to be in the profit. And as the hash rate increases, I don't know what it is now, 300 million tera hash per second or whatever. As this increases, the marginal cost of adding more is going to be higher, right? So, the first, you produce 300 million terahashes per second. Adding 20 million terahashes per second is going to be more expensive than the first 20 or the previous 20, right? So the slope here, it represents actually, as we start to go higher, all of the hashes that are available through any method possible. Like up here somewhere we have me hashing with my iPhone or something like that, right? It's very expensive. It's not very efficient. It's not going to be profitable unless Bitcoin is astronomically expensive. So you actually are going to get some sort of an asymptote here, and this is going to represent the maximum value of all the hashes if everybody was hashing all their electronic devices and pencil and paper and everything. In the near future, like in the next week or two or the next 2 months, there is a maximum number that we can produce. Like we can't go beyond that without creating a bunch of new ASICs. If we create ASICs, we're actually going to move this curve kind of off to the right. But for a short period of time, typically the curve is going to be fixed, looking like this with some sort of maximum. Okay, so as you can see, there's this point here. This is the point where the marginal cost of producing hash is going to exceed the marginal revenue. You add more hash, you go up this level, you also drive the difficulty up, drives the revenue down. So what we have here is all of these miners here that are producing this hash rate are making profit. And the profit is going to be given by this delta here. This is the reward they're getting. This is the cost they're getting. This amount is a profit. These miners, this miner is indifferent. Everybody who's passed this, people with old ASICs, people with expensive electricity, people with 386s, they're going to be over here. They're going to be not mining typically, right? So the important thing to look at here is you have all this hash rate, which is profitable, and then you have this hash rate here, which is not profitable, and it's expensive, and it's hard to get to, and there's also going to be a small amount of it, right? So even, if I've drawn this picture, I don't know how correct this is, but let's just say this is like, I don't know, 85% of the available hash rate in the world right now might be profitable for Bitcoin mining. Now that's a very secure situation because it means that in order for someone to come and attack the network, they might be able to acquire some of this, 5 or 10%, and they can go, acquire for some heavy cost. But they also, in addition to that, they need to go over here and they need to convince a large portion of profitable miners to help them attack the network. Now, I think this is the main security assumption in Bitcoin, that most profitable miners, if they're making healthy profit, are not going to participate in an attack. Right? I think this is a pretty good assumption. This is the assumption that people are making when they say it's impossible to attack the network. It's never impossible to attack the network because, I could go, if I had enough guns, I could hold enough guns to all these miners' heads and tell them to attack the network. It's theoretically possible, but it's very, very unlikely that you're going to convince a large portion of profitable miners to go and attack the network, right? So this is a secure picture. You have very small amount of hash rate, which is obtainable for expensive amount, and then everything else you have to convince miners to abandon their profitable hashing. Okay. What's the important thing that we see about this? Very important thing here is a slope. Right? So the slope of this curve here, as we get more towards the right, it's going to be sloping up. Right? This means that even if we were to say drop the Bitcoin price a little bit, if we drop the Bitcoin price by 10%, it means this curve is going to be moving downward by 10%. You're going to be coming over here. You're only going to be losing a very small amount of hash rate. You're only going to be changing a very small amount of hash rate to non-profitable, from profitable to profitable. So this is a small drop in price, or say even a 10% drop in price, only flips a very small percentage of the hash rate to profitable. Right? So small drop in price, you still have the large majority of the hash rate is profitable, and you've only added a little bit to this ammunition for attack. Even a halving, right? You cut this curve in half. If this slope is steep, you're still only losing a little bit of hash rate, and you're only adding a little bit to the potential attacker's arsenal, right? So as long as this slope is steep, you're good. Now notice there is not a number here. I mean, this is kind of a unit-free picture. It will have units, but in reality, but this is just some sort of dollar number, and this is dollar per time, and this is some hash rate per time. This can be massively expanded to trillions and trillions of terahashes per second. The important thing is that the slope does not become too flat. So here's the bad picture. This is a good picture, and I think this is the way things are now. This is why things have been this way over the last probably 10 years. This is why Bitcoin's not been attacked. That's why it's not going to be attacked in the near future. But here's the concern, the long-term security budget FUD, is that there could be a time in the future when more ASICs are produced, miners become more efficient with more ASICs, and so instead you get this sort of long sloping curve. Much more ASICs are out there, and so that the maximum is way over there now. And then let's say that we've had these curves that are cutting in half, and the price is not going up, and then somehow we're here, right? So now look at this picture. So this is the scary picture, right? The hash rate, the block reward. If I have a very flat slope here, this is a really competitive. Miners are really competitive. They're just fighting. They're fighting to stay profitable. You have this very narrow margin of profitability, and worse, this portion here only represents a smaller fraction of the achievable hash rate. Like, so there's some point up, up here where you're talking about like iPhones and things that would never make sense to hash. But if you have a bunch of ASICs that are maybe slightly out of date, you could be talking about hashing for a little bit more expensive. This is all non-profitable hashing. You might be able, an attacker, if they were sufficiently motivated, might be able to now obtain this. And if this hash rate is bigger than this hash rate, you don't have to convince any profitable miners to join in your attack. You only have to convince non-profitable miners to help you attack. And that should be, in theory, more just a question of money, right? You have all these warehouses full of ASICs which are not being used. You say, can I pay you money for these? People say, sure. These people know they're making money, they have a business, it's working. These folks, yeah, please take them off my hands, right?